If you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
Thanks, Vic, for having us on the show tonight. My name's Shawn, and I have a background in archaeology. I've worked for over a decade and a half in pretty densely forested areas, and I've seen a lot of clues, tree structures, some tracks, and heard sounds that I didn't recognize. And also, I've gone camping and I've had some experiences where a possible dogman pushed in the tent with his snout, but haven't really seen one till recently. And my research goes back a few years ago, or actually maybe about 5 years ago. I started getting into it more in depth and trying to solve the mystery and just do as much reading as I could and watch a lot of videos and different perspectives and seeing what other type of facts are out there or cover stories. But anyway, I've had some paranormal things as a child that was dealing with a coyote type, a black mist that when I was 6 years old, I remember seeing that. Don't know if that's Dogman related or if it's connected to something else.
Hi, Vic, and hi, everyone listening. My name is Maya. I have a background in Reiki, energy healing modalities. And I've also, my dad has been researching cryptids. I've gone on some of those archaeology jobs and also seen structures in the woods.
Yeah.
And I've just been learning, I guess, in the amount of time that he's been knowing about like Dogmen and Bigfoot. So I've been kind of like learning along the way, but it wasn't until like this trip that it like really solidified and really pushed me
it was an impact.
To research the truth. And I don't know, just
keep digging deeper. And trying to solve all of this, because it's pretty shocking what we dealt with.
Yeah.
And by the way, check out our YouTube channel, Beyond the Visual Spectrum, for metaphysical and paranormal topics. The way the encounter started off is we went to West Virginia to help a friend, Lisa, with some farm work and some different tasks over a period of about 2 weeks. Everything progressed slowly over the 2 weeks, and the clues came together that actually helped us to identify what was really going on. And it was pretty much shocking how fast things progressed.
So on the first night that we were there, it was Friday, September 16th. The only thing that like stood out in relation to this experience was that my dad said that he sensed some vibrations in the ground.
Yeah, it was like a hum. And I could feel it through my feet, and I didn't hear it, but I felt it in the ground, which was really weird.
And then also later that night, we saw a white ball of light, like a star almost. And it was drifting across the sky in a straight line. And we just watched it keep going. And then we got like a little dull pocket flashlight and we flashed at it. And then it started to fade off. And we were like, what?
Yeah, it was bright as the brightest star in the sky, but it kind of drifted across the sky and it's like a straight line. So, I mean, we weren't sure if that was, a UFO. It didn't look like a plane the way it was, didn't flash or anything. It was just a solid ball of light.
Yeah, and those were the only things that happened on the first night. And then on the second night, Saturday, September 17th, I personally saw another glowing bright star fly across the sky in the same direction, in the same path.
Spherical UFO.
Yeah, a spherical UFO. And it was going in the same direction, same path across the sky. And this time I didn't flash it and it didn't fade away. I just watched it go. And then I was like, okay, I've seen things like that all my life, so it's not anything new. But this was the night that I would say set everything in motion, and it was like the beginning of the encounter and also the entire...
Yeah, a lot of anomalies and synchronicities that start taking place. They started adding up to something more than a coincidence.
So this night, I went to sleep and I had this nightmare about a dogman. And to briefly describe the dream, it was in this dark field, and I had gotten this text message and it said, "Why did you send out the photos?" And I was confused, and it was photos that I had taken with my phone. And then after that, I was walking on this sidewalk, and in this structure, this abandoned structure, there was like a deer's head, and it was ripped off, and there was blood all over the ground. And so I called my dad over in the dream, and we look at it, and then we see ahead of us on the sidewalk, there's this big black shadow bipedal wolf like shadow creature walking into like a white light portal, like a blue glow around the white. And I was walking into it, and it had big broad shoulders, tall ears, and long arms. It was really tall. It was probably 9 feet tall in relation to my height and my dad's height in the dream. And then after that, I was released from the dream, and I was laying in bed, and I was paralyzed. Like, my body was paralyzed. My eyes were shut. My arms couldn't move. My legs couldn't move, but I was like awake.
Yeah, sleep paralysis.
Like a sleep paralysis. And then I noticed, I feel this like heavy, black,
like
smoky mist pushing down on my chest. And the reason I knew the color of that weight on my chest was because I saw it in my mind's eye. It was like a black, smoky, heavy pressure mist pushing down on me. And then the sleep paralysis kind of went away. And then I heard like this sound. It sounded like something heavy sliding across the floor. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I called out to my dad, and I didn't get a response. I was like, oh my God, is that a ghost? Or like, what is this? Especially after having this experience happening at this moment. I'm scared, and I go into a meditation because I don't want to be overcome by this fear. And I, go into this peaceful state of mind, and I ask for like angelic intervention to come and remove this black mist that's like pushing me down. And then the weight starts to lift, and then the black mist starts to go over my head, and then it disappears. It goes away. And then I'm able to feel safe again and go back to sleep. So that's what happened. And that was a nightmare. And then when I wake up on Sunday, the 18th of September, I wake up early because I didn't really sleep well that night from that dream or that nightmare. And I go to the sliding glass door, and I peek out the curtain just like a slight bit. And then I notice there's this giant white hawk by this tree.
About 2.5 feet tall.
Yes, about 2.5 feet tall. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a giant white hawk. And it had like some black and like dark gray under feathers. And as soon as I peeked out, like just the slightest bit to see it, it flies off, but it curves around like some other trees, so I couldn't see its wingspan. And I was like, what? I've never seen that before. And anyway, so I tell my dad, and then I move on from that, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that was a rare sighting because, I've seen squirrels before that were white, and the hawk I hear is even more rare.
Yeah. And then also later that day, we went with Lisa, and we went with her to like the back part of the property.
Yeah, the outer perimeter of the property line where it's really heavily forested, and it's near a preserve, like a game preserve. And we were looking for tracks, but when we came back, just probably the last 20% of the dirt road, I saw tracks that were huge out the window, and I said, stop the car. So we jumped out and we got around to the area where we could photograph them. And these were canine paw prints, and they were a lot larger than my fist. Some of them were, later we put things like spoons next to them for size comparison, and my fist and shoes and things like that. But they were 5.25 inches to 5.4 inches long. And there was one claw extra on a couple of the tracks. And it was like a fifth appendage that was almost kind of like a thumb claw, but still the track looked canine. It didn't look like what you think of as the raccoon type hands for the front of the Dogman. It was still very odd looking, and they were really big. So, and it just kind of came out of the forest. And it was walking in the mud. And there was a few of the tracks that were in the harder mud. And so they were firm. And then a lot of the other ones were in the wet mud where they weren't really identifiable as far as like size and, how many toes. So we just got the really good one, the good ones that were, intact. And this is also where Lisa, she like had this realization where it dawned on her that this spot was where her medium-sized dog went missing. Back in February. Yeah, back in February. And then she was like, oh my God. That was really concerning because we're looking at these huge prints, taking photos, and we're like, oh my God. So we go back to her house and we're doing research. We're looking up how big is an average wolf print, how big is a large dog print. And then we're seeing that the prints that we found are larger. Yeah, significantly. And not only that, they have this fifth claw, and that's, I don't know, that's insane. But also, this is the night that we hear the sounds start to begin. And I wanted to know also that we were down that road where we saw the tracks to just know where her land was, because we were going to put up no trespassing signs the next couple days. So we go back to our house after researching about dog tracks and wolf tracks. Yeah. We go back to our house, that was the guest house that we're staying in. And I would also like to note here that while we were at her house, I saw that she had a white plastic hawk statue on a post in her garden. And that was the same day that I saw that big, giant white hawk. But Lisa, she's never seen a white hawk in real life. So now back to where we're at our house. It's late at night, and it's scheduled to rain on Monday. Keep that in mind. So it's late at night, Sunday night, and then I walk in my dad's room, and I hear this rumbling thunder sound coming like from that back area. And it's in the diagram. You'll see where his room is. Yeah, the back part of the house, which was like the darker area. Yeah, there was no lights on the outside of it. So the sound started in that part of the mobile home. So I hear like distant thunder and rumbling, and I don't really pay it any mind other than thinking that it's pretty. Well, it rains. It was supposed to rain the next morning. So it was supposed to rain, so I didn't really think much of it. And that's all we heard that night. So now it is Monday, September 19th. It did rain in the morning, and we were going back out to where we saw the tracks to put up the signs. And we noticed that the tracks that we had seen were all washed away and couldn't see them anymore. And then later that night, because during the day, nothing significant happened. So later that night, we heard the light tappings and
rumblings and
Yeah, those thumps, taps, kind of like a rustling, a rumbling in the wall.
Yeah, it was something small. It sounded like maybe a mouse or a squirrel or chipmunk. Something small, and we were just like, we didn't really think too much of that also.
And it happened probably right after 9 o'clock.
It was definitely at night. All the sounds always happened at night. So we didn't really think much of that, went to bed. Now it is Tuesday, September 20th. We go back out on the same road again.
The same dirt road.
The same dirt road. We're still putting up no trespassing signs, no hunting signs, cutting down some branches that are
blocking the view of the signs, the old signs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we see that there's a new set of tracks in the same spot, but
really close to them.
Yeah.
And you could see where the old ones were totally eroded and just kind of washed away. And then the new ones were a foot or so away from the old ones, but same creature, same size.
Yeah, and the same fifth claw.
Yeah.
So we took some more photos of that too. And then we started going down the dirt road. And it was my idea to start from the very back and work our way to the front just in case anything were to happen that the Jeep that we were in was already facing the way out, right? So we were at this four-wheeler road that goes up a hill, and at the bottom.
That one. Okay.
At the top of that hill, at the bottom of that is
the
Lisa's house
borders her land
and her pond.
Yeah.
So anyway, up that four-wheeler road, about halfway up, it's very steep, and then it kind of levels out just a bit. So I'm by myself, and I'm walking up that steep part of the four-wheeler road.
Steep. Yeah.
And my dad, he's back down at the Jeep, just getting more nails and more posters. And to my left, I hear this big sound. It sounded like a wild boar. It startled me, but I think I startled it. It was breaking all the branches.
Bolted off really quick.
Yeah, it was breaking the branches that were on the ground and bolting off into the woods, more towards the left.
I think it would have been to the west. Yeah.
And it was breaking the twigs that were on the trees, and it was just making a lot of noise. It was making stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there was that main section of sound, and there was a little moment of silence, and there was another set of sounds
running off,
another thing running off up
direction.
the hill, up the hill, and
yeah,
it was
toward the ridge top.
So there was two sets of sounds, and I was that scared me so much that I was running down the hill. My heart was racing, and I slipped down that steep part, and I was oh my god, I heard something big. It sounded like a wild boar. And I'm out of breath and I'm scared. And then I tell my dad what happened at the bottom, by the Jeep, and we're talking about it for 5 minutes or so. And then calm down. Because in my mind I'm okay, nothing ambushed me, nothing attacked me. Maybe it was a deer. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I thought and I was hoping. So we're going, this time my dad comes with me and we both go up that road again. And then I pull out my phone and I start snapping photos in the direction that I heard those sounds. And I take pictures all the way up that hill, that road. I take pictures on top of the hill, a panorama. And we're putting signs up on the right side
of the four-wheeler road.
And then we see some more structures. You want to describe those?
And there was a lot of branches that seemed to be fit together with tension. So it was almost like they weren't just laid on tree branches. They were pieced together where it was almost it had to be intelligently done. It wasn't branches that fell from another tree and just happened to fall in that position. So we saw some of these structures, took some photographs of them, and most of them were 10, 12 feet long, the branches, and there would be 5 or 6 of them kind of leaned on each other, positioned. And then there was some others that were just like two big trees that were kind of like crossing, making an X. And some of them had, chew marks and bite and gnaw marks on them.
Yeah. And so after we take all those photos and put up the signs, we come back down the hill and we're back by the Jeep. And then this guy from an oil company.
Local oil technician working on the oil pumps pulls up, and we just have small talk. And I'm asking him, has he ever seen any abnormally large coyotes? And he pauses for a second or two and kind of looks down and looks back up and says, no, I haven't. And he goes, but I've seen a lot of coyotes, and there's some bears out here too. And he shows me some photos, game cam photos on his phone. And then he starts to drive off and goes, well, y'all be safe out here. So it's kind of a little weird feeling. Like, what does he know?
And then after that, we just continue putting up signs the rest of the day. And then when we're heading out, we noticed that guy who was driving that truck, he ran over the tracks, so we couldn't see them anymore. So it's a good thing that we saw them and took pictures of them before that happened. So also that day, it's important to note here that 2 days before we arrived, the Wi-Fi. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, well, we were told by the landowner, Lisa, that the Wi-Fi went out 2 days before we got there. And when these crews showed up, they came in 5 large trucks with the bucket lift. And there was about 2 to 3 guys in each truck. And they said, we brought the Army out here this time to find out what's wrong with the Wi-Fi. And it was a 20-minute fix or so. And the strange thing is that the problem was up on a pole high up by a tree, and the wire cable was torn off or damaged somehow. But it was really odd, how it was documented. So anyway, that's pretty much what happened with that.
Yeah, so the Wi-Fi went out 2 days before we got there, and then the Wi-Fi people came and fixed it that afternoon. So later that night, we heard more rumbling, and this time it was a little bit bigger. It sounded like a bigger animal than the night before. More intense, a little bit longer, like each night as the weeks progress, it gets louder, longer, and,
Well, louder impacts. You kind of progressed from like chipmunk or a rat to a raccoon.
So at this point, it sounds like a squirrel or a little bit bigger, maybe like a raccoon or something.
The gopher creatures, the little...
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit bigger of an animal than it was before.
Right.
But we don't have enough evidence to...
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out the type of animal that is probably making it, or even a cat chasing a squirrel or something. I mean, these all popped in our head. So
yeah, and then also that night when I was in my room reading, getting ready to go to bed, I would hear these weird sounds, like something sliding on like a floor, or like a like that kind of sound. And then I was thinking maybe we're dealing with a ghost, because I couldn't pinpoint where that sound was coming from or what was making it.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking at the time. So,
and we'll come back later with what most likely happened for the sliding sound.
Yeah. So now it's Wednesday, September 21st. This was the day that my dad was working on the roof, and he noticed like
on the back side of the house or the mobile home, the whole bottom row of screws from end to end, the roof screws were all plucked out of the wood. And I noticed that. And I didn't really, at that time, think of anything else other than maybe it was just whoever fixed the roof or put it together didn't get them in the wood good.
Yeah.
So.
And you were working up there because you were cleaning the gutters.
Yeah, I was cleaning the gutter, yeah.
So, that night also, during the day, nothing really happened. But during the night is when you can hear the humming now. And the rumblings and the taps and the thumps and the thuds were getting a little louder, a little more concerning. And the humming, it sounded to me like when I would walk in my dad's room, because that's the only place you could really hear it.
Feel it.
Feel it, because you would feel uneasy and a little bit scared. So it would sound like when you notice an AC coming on.
Right.
It's like you notice that sound is there now. And then like when it turns off, you notice it's gone. So I walked in the room and you hear this, but it's like very low and it's like subtle at this point. So it's like, I'm still thinking, what the heck is that? Is this a ghost or something? Yeah. And also I just wanted to mention here, and I'll like reiterate it throughout the rest of this experience, that as the sounds got louder, as the hums got louder, our sleep would get more disrupted.
Right. It was waking up more.
We'd wake up more throughout the night and having to pee. Our bladders would hurt.
Yeah, we had some bladder issues. That was, we'll explain what we think about why that happened later.
And also in correlation with that, whenever the sounds would start, my dad's little Chihuahua dog, Smalley, we would keep her in the bathroom with a little doggy door. And she would stay in the bathroom in his room where you can hear those sounds. And she would want to come out, like she would be begging to come out. And my dad would pick her up, place her on the bed, and she'd dart under the covers.
And I noticed that just a few minutes before the tapping and the rumblings and the thuds and all that started, she would start wanting to come out of the bathroom. She was getting uneasy. And she would kind of whine a little bit. So I was, I started connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So.
And also that night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to go pee. And
Wednesday, right?
Yeah, this is Wednesday night.
September 21st.
Mm-hmm. And my bladder was hurting, and I went to go pee. And then I'm walking back to my room. And once again, in the diagram, you'll see like where the door is. I noticed the door, the deadbolt is unlocked. And I'm really concerned. I'm like, what? This was locked before both of us went to bed. So I go back to my dad's room and I'm like, wake up, wake up. Did you unlock that door just now while I was in the bathroom? Or then he wakes up and he's like, no, I've been asleep this whole time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. And that was very scary. And yeah, that's the night I took Smalley, the little Chihuahua. I took her with me to my room because I was really scared. And I went back to sleep. And also I heard this like sounds.
This swishing kind of sliding sound, right?
Yeah, I heard that like when I went back to my room, because I stayed up for a little while before I went back to sleep. So I would hear that, and I was really thinking it was a ghost, and I didn't really like that feeling.
And you didn't know that the sound was inside or outside.
Yeah, I couldn't really like pinpoint where the sound was coming from. So Thursday, September 22nd, in the morning, I noticed that Smalley is under my bed. And I'm like, oh my God, what? That's kind of concerning because the deadbolt was unlocked just the night before. And I wake up and she's under the bed scared.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
So, nothing really happened during the day. But it was at night the sounds came back. Always at night. And it was like tappings, like when you take your fingers.
Rhythmic.
Yeah, and you just take your fingers and you tap, like, let me see if I can recreate it, like, but like a lot louder. It sounded like a bigger animal.
It's like if you just, kind of like, tap your fingers, all of them kind of in like a piano, like you're playing piano, but on a desktop.
Yeah. And it was loud. And now at this point, we would hear the dinks, like the dinks on
the dinks on the windows. And, it sounded like a coin or something hard, just tapping the windows. Yeah. And
we would hear that in the window in my dad's room.
Yep.
And then also, would you hear it on the glass door on his side?
Yeah. So it was basically in the end of the house that was dark.
Mm-hmm. And I remember my dad would always peek out the window with his bright flashlight. And on the back porch, in the diagram, you'll see where the back porch is, to see if there was anything out there, like raccoons or, something.
Coyotes.
Like, what's making that noise?
Yeah.
And nothing would ever be there. So it was kind of just getting annoying a little bit. And also a little like, nerve inducing, or like,
yeah, it was, it left an uneasy feeling.
Yeah.
Because it was still a mystery, but
yeah, and I didn't feel like
a little bit
comfortable
eerie.
around those sounds.
It's kind of eerie.
And also that humming sound, like when you walk in and all of a sudden it's like, like
yeah,
that.
That was strange, because I felt it like in like my rib cage. The vibrations were resonating in my ribs for some reason.
Yeah. And when I went to bed on Thursday, I was laying in my bed reading, and then I hear like these footstep sounds like outside, kind of like in a sloshy, muddy
like
grass
a
area.
grass that's got water in it, standing water.
I heard those sounds, and in the diagram of the house, I kind of drew where I heard those sounds, and it was along the side of the house where the rain would drip off the roof, and also where all those screws were on, like, kind of loose a little bit.
Right, yeah.
So I heard that.
So basically from end to end of that backside of the house, there was an area where it was like a really long depression, a foot wide maybe, where the water would accumulate, and it'd be standing water even a couple days after a moderate rain. And it would just be a few inches of water,
Yeah. And then I told my dad the next morning, and we kind of just ruled it out as a ghost at this point still.
Yeah, it started just, we had to think outside of the box of rodents and animals a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So now it's Friday. So Friday is when my dad put new screws in on the roof. Do you want to describe that?
We basically just repairing a roof. The whole line of screws from end to end, just above the gutter. And most of them were not in the wood. They had been kind of plucked out of the wood, the old ones. So I didn't really think much about it, other than just, maybe it was just time and weather that did it.
Yeah. And then that night, it was like in the evening, or before I was going to bed, I heard this sound. I just heard like little thuds on my side of the house. It wasn't nearly as intense or loud as, where my dad's room was. It was kind of more faint. And so I would call my dad. I'd be like, was that you? Or do you hear this too? And he would say, no, that wasn't me, but I hear it.
That happened a lot throughout this whole time, where we thought, the other one was making the noise, or
across the house.
Yeah.
And that happened like pretty often. So that night, after I called my dad over, he turned the light switch off, and it flickered for a split second, but I didn't really register it until the next day. So it flickered for a split second, and that night I have another Dogman dream. So just briefly, like, describe that dream. I was in this little village area, and I found out that everyone in that town was a dogman, or like a dogman creature, but there was a white dogman that was like the alpha or the leader of all the rest. And then, I woke up the next day, and the next day we replaced the light bulb because it had completely gone out, which I thought was kind of weird. That also made me think it was a ghost or something because of the like interference. And this is Saturday, the September 24th, when we replaced the light bulb. And also that night, we hear more rumblings, more humming, more tappings.
Rhythmic taps with
like a pound at the same time.
So like a
pound, pound, pound. But it's at the same time. Yeah. And that happened every single night. And, it was concerning because now it was getting louder than raccoons.
Yeah, a lot louder.
So now it's Sunday, September 25th. So again at night, everything seemed to happen at night, and not a whole lot happened during the day. It always happened at night. So Sunday, September 25th, I heard like what I thought was like heavy-footed walking in the hallway, which now looking back, it could have been like hitting on the side of the house. But I thought it was walking, and I'm like, I call my dad. I'm like, was that you walking? And then he walks over to my room, and then I noticed that the footsteps are different, or, you know, the sounds are different. And I'm like, okay, that's not him. And then right before he walked over, I heard a slap on the side of the house where the hallway was, so I could hear it where I was in my room. And it was like a big slap, like a big hand just slapping the side of the house. And I was like, oh my God, what was that? And at the same time, I saw like a white flash in my room where I was staying. And it was kind of like a camera flash where it's like bright white and it turns into like a line, kind of like that. And I see that in my room. I'm like, maybe it's a ghost. Still, you know, this is still where we're thinking maybe we're being haunted. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, we actually thought maybe poltergeist or something.
Yeah, and we're still hearing the rumbling, and we're still not putting the pieces together.
To be beyond annoying. It was, you know, making it difficult to sleep.
Yeah, so Monday, September 26th, this is when the landowner, Lisa, she heard a howl in the morning. She told us this, you know, when we saw her later that day.
Right.
So things are starting to build up. More things are starting to add up, and we're starting now to put things together from here on out. And so this day, my dad's dog, Smalley, she's on her harness, and we have her like on this tether out in the yard so she can, you know.
And she basically would spend, you know, an hour every day on that, and we hadn't had any problems.
Yeah, she's been on that tether for like the entire stay so far, only during the day. So it's around 5-ish or so. She pulls out of her harness and she like bolts to the door, to the front porch on that diagram. And I'm like, that's really strange. So I get her and I bring her back inside, put her back in the bathroom. And then Lisa comes over. My dad, he's staining the back porch because that's what we were doing that day. And she brings her little dog, and her little dog starts barking in the area where Smalley ran from. And my dad was talking to her, and then you heard some yips. Remember you said?
Yeah, those some yips in the distance up in the hill.
And then right when you heard that, her dog back at her house was like going crazy.
Going crazy, like just making a lot of noise. He was barking at something over there.
Yeah. And then we also told Lisa the sounds we've been hearing. We're like, what do you think this could be? You know, are there rats in the house or raccoons, or what is the sound? And so my dad, he tries to like reenact the sounds or recreate the sounds.
Yeah, I went outside and just beat on the outside of the house.
Yeah, and I went inside the bedroom. I went inside the bedroom with Lisa, and the sounds that my dad was banging on the side of the house, they weren't as loud as the sounds that we were hearing as they progressively became to be, right?
Yeah, and I'm 190 pounds and martial arts background, and I'm sitting there just hitting it until the side of the house, pretty hard and solid, you know.
Yeah, it was pretty loud, but it wasn't as loud. It was like 70% as loud as what we've been hearing, and it was more simple. It was more like bang, bang, bang instead of bang, 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 bang.
The banging and the thumps and the sounds that we were hearing, taps, had almost kind of like a pattern.
Yeah, like pattern, like almost like beats, really.
Yeah, it was really odd, strange.
And yeah, and I was like, then that kind of concerned me because I told my dad that the sounds we were hearing, they were way louder than what he was doing. So now we were like scratching our heads and like putting two and two together a little bit more. So then you hear the yips. So after she left, she comes back around 7:30, and I give her some Clorox and she gives me some like lotion. And also she locked the gate that night for the first time since we were there. And I just thought it was what it was, I guess.
A little unnerving about that.
A little unnerving because the dogs were acting up and she said she heard a howl. So I was a little, concerned, but not too much. So she comes back, I give her some bleach, and then like a neighbor drives by right at that time and she's like, did you know that your donkeys got out? They're down the street. And she's like, no. And I'm like, they probably got out during the same, within the same time span that, all the dogs are acting up.
And the thing about donkeys is that donkeys actually can kill coyotes. They're not afraid of them.
Yeah, and she told us that the donkeys hadn't really gotten out really at all in the most, recent time.
It seemed like it was when we were there.
So then the donkeys make it back, later in the night. And this is the night where I look at my phone and I'm like, let me go look at those photos that I took last week.
By the four-wheeler road.
By the four-wheeler road where I heard all those sounds and stuff. So I go back and I'm looking at the photos. And then I zoom in because something catches my eye. And I see like this black wolf type creature. And it's got like pointed ears, a big like snout.
Yeah.
And it's got long arms. And it's hidden in the bushes. And at first,
and it's not like it's blurry though. Like it's you could see it crystal clear in the photo. And when you start zooming in, it starts, you're starting to see what it is.
Yeah. And at first I was like, okay, maybe I'm just seeing things. So I screenshot it. I sent it to my dad and I'm still like analyzing the photo. And then I see like this weird deer looking creature, like in the corner of the photo, kind of where I heard the second set of sounds run towards. And I was like, okay, maybe that was what that was. Maybe it was that deer. But then I sent it to my dad and he's like, that deer doesn't look like a deer. And then you said that was a dogman.
Yeah, I saw what I was looking at. The black wolf is definitely a massive dogman type creature because to be that far back and you can look at the things around it, the leaves and the thickness of the trees. And yeah, it had to be massive. Like I would think like a lion size.
Yeah.
That was a good catch with your camera there.
Yeah. And then that was kind of really concerning now because that was taken on the same day we saw the second set of tracks. So now it's like, dang, that, things are really adding up. And then also I took a look and the timestamp that I took that photo was 11/11.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's crazy.
And a lot of the things that we experienced were the sounds, right at 3:33 in the morning, or it would be at 11:11 at night, or 12:12, or 10:10. It's a digital clock, and we still thought it was like synchronicities and just odd. All this type of stuff was going on. It's just really bizarre.
Yeah. So I go to bed pretty late that night, but also the sounds were being made back in your room.
Yeah, and they got louder, and it happened a longer period of time. Sometimes it would happen, and then you have a 20-minute break, it's silent, and then it starts up again, and then the 10-minute break, it starts up again.
Yeah,
and it was just annoying and very difficult to go to sleep not knowing what it was.
Yeah. And then also you would notice like the trailer, the motion sensor lights would be on too.
So we had a trailer outside in the front yard that had a motion detector light. The light stayed on, the solar light, but if something walked in front of it, not like a cat, but it had to be like, a dog size, a big dog or, human, and it would register that and sense that, and the light would come on even brighter than just it had like 4 bulbs, and then 8 bulbs would light up once something moved in front of it. And I noticed that happened a lot, like when I was hearing the taps and rumblings and stuff and dinks. Sometimes I'd go out and that had already been activated, so something set off that motion detector solar light.
Yeah.
So we start getting a little more concerned about all this stuff.
Yeah. So now it's Tuesday, September 27th. And I woke up, and when I met my dad in the kitchen, he said that, you woke up sometime during your sleep to, reanalyze his photos. And
yeah, I woke up out of like a deep sleep and grabbed my, the phone and looked at that photo that my daughter sent me, and I zoomed in on it and I started studying it more. And I actually saw that it wasn't just a dogman or a wolf type face. There was actually a gray alien, what your stereotypical gray alien would look like, but a little different. And it had like an arm, like the right arm placed over the top of the head, covering the left ear. So the head of the gray alien was like in front of the left ear of this wolf. And you could see that it was not just leaves or a branch. It had a humanoid shape to it.
Yeah.
And it looked like there was some sort of muzzle type of thing, a metallic muzzle on the front of the wolf creature's snout.
Yeah.
So,
and then later in the morning, we went to go unload some windows with one of the landowner's neighbors. And then he told you about coyotes.
Yeah, and I was looking up at the hilltop of the woods and the forest, and I was thinking about asking this local guy Johnny if he seen anything out there like coyotes or wolves. And before I could open my mouth about it, he said, "You gotta watch your little one." Talking about my Chihuahua, he goes, because those coyotes will come down from the woods and snatch her up. And I was like, what? I said, that's crazy. I was about to talk to him about that. And then he said, yeah, the howling started and the yipping started about the time you guys got here. So that was also very weird.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure that out. That was strange.
Yeah. And then you and him worked on Lisa's roof, and I noticed that he was, really comfortable on the roof, and he was the same guy that did the screws on the house that we were staying on. Yeah. So I was kind of
wondering. He did good work.
Yeah, he did good work. So I was wondering why that bottom row was, kind of pushed up a little bit. The
screws seem to be like lifted out of the 2x4s.
Yeah. So anyway, later that night, we hear, more noises. On my side of the house, I would hear like thuds and like sliding sounds, like, like I've already said. At this point, I think we started to like rule out ghosts, but we still didn't really know what. We didn't know exactly what.
We didn't have any definitive answers.
And also that night, I heard, while I was lying in bed, I heard some yips, like yip, 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 in the distance.
Yeah. There was definitely some coyotes around in there.
Yeah. And also you said like around this time you heard like some weird whoop.
Yeah, I heard many times. I heard stuff that was like outside my window. I heard something was like whoop. It was like whoop. And then I would hear like a kind of a grunt, like whoop, 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 whoop. It was a very odd sound. It didn't sound like a complete howl or a complete grunt. It was just almost like it was cut short. Out in the front yard, close to where the trailer was, I heard what sounded like two dogs, like if say a bigger dog's being pestered by a smaller one, it just kind of snaps at it and kind of growls at it a little bit. Heard the sound kind of like that.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like a canine growl.
Yeah.
And it didn't sound small. So, I wasn't thinking of a poodle or a fox or coyote. I was thinking, well, that sounded bigger. I didn't know what size it could be, but I knew it wasn't a small canine.
So now today is Wednesday, September 28th, and this is a really significant day in this experience. So in my dad's room, the sounds were even louder, and I was like, what is this? Like, what is this?
Just nonstop. It was just, there was bangs and thumps and taps, and it was just doing it all. It was like the grand finale of pestering us with these sounds.
Yeah, and then you're like, I remember I saw my dad like shining
and
light
I was
out
like,
the
I
window.
can't ever see anything. Every time I look outside with a flashlight, I don't see a thing, nothing, zero.
Yeah, and then I'm like kind of looking out the window too. I don't see anything. So then my dad's like, you know what? I'm gonna go outside and see what this is.
Yeah, I said, I'm tired of this. You know, I'm going out. I'm going to check this out. You know.
Yeah, so he goes outside the door.
The back door.
Deadbolt, so the back door.
And there's like some steps that go down, and then there's some patio blocks that you can walk on, patio stones. And so I go out, and I'm, maybe 8 feet from the door, and I shine my light around kind of close to the house a little bit, the immediate surroundings, make sure I'm safe and stuff. And then I shine it straight to the back of the house. And what I saw, it almost stopped my heart, because it was like, unexpected to see this giant wolf, hyena, kind of a saber-toothed tiger type build, like you see in a Ice Age mammals book. It had a sloped back, higher at the shoulders. And I only looked at it for 3 seconds, but my flashlight was really bright. And I could see that the eyes, they were, the yellow, orange color, like an amber, and they were illuminated, but only because my light was on. I couldn't say that I saw it without the flashlight, only with the flashlight, but I saw this creature, and I would say the size of it was 350 pounds. It was creeping like a lion, female lion, like upon a zebra when they kind of get low to the ground, but wasn't quite that low. It was kind of angled going away from the back of the house or back of the mobile home, and maybe the 35 feet behind the mobile home going toward, it was next to a gate, a cattle gate. And the cattle gate was about maybe 4 feet, 4 inches to 4'6" maybe. And the hump, or the shoulder hump on this creature, was just under the top bar, which was, I'm just guessing, 5-6 inches under the top bar, maybe a little more, not sure. But it was really big, and the gate is a little over 5 feet long, and the creature without the tail was a little longer than that, easily. And then the color of it was a gray and charcoal gray, almost a black fur. And it was pretty much balanced with both colors, but it seemed like the charcoal color was a little more splotchy in areas and kind of almost like stripes in a way. Not solid stripes, but splotchy patches that seemed to go in an angle on it. And it had a mane almost like a lion, but not as long, which was charcoal gray. And it wasn't like teeth or mouth opened. The mouth seemed to be closed. And I couldn't make out much about the details about the teeth or anything, but I think the teeth there's some teeth sticking out maybe in the front. I wasn't really sure on that, but I could definitely tell it was a wolf, hyena type of look to it. And especially when it turned its head to me, because it was looking like out to where it was walking to. When I shined the light there, it looked at me. So, yeah. And it didn't like run off or anything. It just stayed there. It looked at me. Yeah. So like a coyote, I've shined a light on a coyote before, and it took off, Yeah. So this is 3 seconds, and I went back in the house, bolted in, and I was just frantic and jittery, and I was, locked the deadbolt the first thing I did and locked the door up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching my dad.
I was running around shutting all the windows, locking them, making sure all the windows were locked.
Yeah, I was watching my dad, and I had never seen him this scared before, ever. And I believed him because I could see the intensity that he experienced, just looking in his eyes. I was like, oh my God. And then you call Lisa. You called on the phone.
Yeah, and I asked her if she could fire off some shots from one of her guns, and she did that just minutes later. And it was quiet that night after the gunshots.
Yeah,
we heard that she was maybe 800-900 feet from us where her house was. But yeah, after that.
Yeah, after that,
it slept good too.
Yeah. There's definitely a energetic difference. Like
Yeah.
the humming wasn't there.
No more taps, knocks, dinks, or nothing. And by the way, the creature was on all fours. It didn't make out anything about the paws. I was looking at the face, more than anything, and didn't really try to. I was just startled and saw it 3 seconds and went in.
Yeah.
If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast.